Hi, everyone. Welcome to Showtime Talk. I'm your host, Tomoya, and we have Orange County Register baseball writer Jeff Fletcher with us. We talk about Shohei Ohtani and all things baseball. Please subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any future videos. So, Jeff, Ohtani seems to be heating up toward the end of the season.
Yeah, definitely. He's been pretty consistent all year, but he does seem to be getting a little better, especially offensively late in the season. Pitching wise, he's been pretty much better as a pitcher than he was last year all year. But offensively, he's really picking it up and he's getting closer to last year's numbers.
Let's talk about the American League MVP race. As of September 12th, who are the front runners?
I mean, it's pretty much Ohtani and Aaron Judge. I don't think you could make a case for anybody else, really. So I expect those two to get all of the first and second place votes. And it's just a matter of how many first place votes go to Judge and how many go to Ohtani. I think you could make a great case for either one. I wouldn't really feel comfortable predicting right now either one. I think that they're both having amazing years, and whoever doesn't win is going to be really unfortunate to have had his amazing year in a year that there was another amazing year going on. So it's going to be a really good race.
Let's compare Ohtani and Judge. Ohtani as a hitter has 34 home runs, 88 RBIs, 11 stall bases, 9 caught stealing, 266 batting average, 355 on-base percentage, 539 slugging percentage, 894 OPS, and 149 OPS plus, which means he's 49% more productive as a hitter compared to the league average. And as a pitcher, he's 12-8, pitched 141 innings. His ERA is 2.55. He leads the major leagues with 12 strikeouts per 9 innings among those who qualify for the ERA title. His ERA plus is 157, which means his ERA adjusted by league and ballpark factors is 57% better than the league average. That is 9th best in the majors and 5th best in the American League. And here are the Judge's numbers. Judge leads the major leagues with 55 home runs, 121 RBIs. His batting average is 307, on-base percentage 410, slugging percentage 679, OPS 1090, and he leads the majors in OPS plus with 205. What's interesting, though, is he has 16 stolen bases, 5 more than Ohtani, with just 2 caught stealing. Any of these numbers stand out to you?
Well, obviously, Aaron Judge's homers are the big thing that stand out to everybody. I mean, he has a chance to break the American League record of 61 homers. And really, nobody other than the guys in the steroid era have hit 61 in either league. So a lot of people still view 61 as the legitimate home run record. So if Aaron Judge breaks that record, a lot of people are going to really feel like he should win the MVP. That's the thing that stands out the most. But just all of his numbers across the board are incredible offensively. He's having the best offensive season of anybody since Barry Bonds, who obviously was using steroids when he did it. So it is definitely a once in a generation season that we're really seeing out of Aaron Judge.
If Judge had been playing like this last season, do you think the AL MVP race would have been much closer?
Definitely. Judge's season this year is much better than Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s season last year. And, last year, Ohtani and Guerrero were closer offensively. Ohtani was doing better offensively than he is now, and Guerrero was not as good offensively as Judge is, so the gap was smaller. So it was much easier for people to justify, Ohtani's pitching makes up for this small gap in offense. This year, it's a very big gap in offense, so that's why there's some question if Ohtani's pitching is enough to overcome that.
For those who are not familiar with the selection process, how do they select American and National League MVPs?
There are 30 writers in each league who vote. It's 2 writers from each city in the league. So that means there's the 2 from New York, 2 from Los Angeles, 2 from Seattle, 2 from Texas, etc. So even though there are many more writers overall in the big markets, New York and Boston, as far as the voting goes, they're represented equally. Every team, Tampa has 2, New York has 2. So that's how they do it. Each writer fills out a ballot from 1 to 10, and the votes are weighted by you get the most points for a first place vote, next for second place, and so on down. So this year, I don't really expect there to be too much of the voting decided by anything from 3rd to 10th, because I think every single voter is going to have Judge 1, Ohtani 2, or Ohtani 1, Judge 2. So it'll just basically be a very simple question of the 30 voters, which guy gets more first place votes.
Are you one of the MVP voters this year?
Not this year. I have voted for the MVP. Usually I do it about every other year. I haven't done it since 2020. So this year I have Rookie of the Year. We just like to move it around to have different writers vote each year.
So you can freely talk about your opinions on MVP voting.
Sure.
Do voters from each city tend to vote for players in their own city?
I mean, I think if there's two players who are close, the voters in that player's home city are probably going to lean towards him. I think that's just normal, but because there are the same number of voters from each city, they basically cancel each other out. So, say for example, it was Ohtani and Judge were dead even. The New York voters would probably vote for Judge, and the LA voters would probably vote for Ohtani, and then it would be the other 26 voters that would really decide.
Is that because of the attachment to the players, or is it because kind of playing favors for their teams?
I mean, I think if you see the player more often, you're going to be more inclined to be more familiar with their case. And if it's a total tie, then you might want to lean towards the guy that you are most familiar with.
Other than the pure numbers, what factors do you think will play in deciding whether Ohtani or Judge for the MVP?
Well, a lot of people like to look at the team performance because they have the idea that valuable means you help your team get to the playoffs. Me personally, I don't believe that. I believe valuable means who adds the most to his team. And if that means a team that would have won 55 games without that player and they win 65 with that player, that value that player's added is 10 wins. And if another player's team would have won 90 games without him and they win 95 games with him, that player's only added 5 wins. So I think that player has less value. But a lot of people would say, well, the other team was bad no matter what, so they didn't really add anything. I disagree with that because I think that you're putting them on an uneven footing because you're comparing their teammates to each other and not really comparing the two players. It's an individual award, so I think you should just judge on what the individual player's contribution is. So in that case, you're comparing Ohtani to Judge and not really comparing the other 25 Yankees to the other 25 Angels. I think that's not a fair way to do it, but a lot of people do. So that's going to be another reason that Judge is definitely going to have an advantage over Ohtani in that case, because obviously the Yankees are doing much better than the Angels. The Yankees are going to make the playoffs and the Angels aren't.
How about a Yankees factor, playing for the Yankees for the biggest team in baseball?
I don't think that matters at all. Just because, like I said, it's 2 voters from each city. So, the baseball voters, it's a pretty small group and they're pretty well informed. So they're not likely to be really swayed by the fact that they've seen, more written about Judge because he's from New York and et cetera. If you were going down to, picking 500 voters and the voters were not as informed, it would be more easy for them to be just persuaded by the volume of media coverage of one player versus the other. But these 30 people dig into it pretty hard and they know the numbers. They don't need to be really convinced by mass media.
What's the criteria for being most valuable?
I mean, it's up to the voters, basically. They have some criteria listed, but it pretty much just comes down to whatever an individual writer believes is most valuable. And like, to me, I believe it's who adds the most to his team, period. And so to me, I believe the most valuable player and the best player are the same thing. So I don't think that there is this debate, we should have 2 awards. The most valuable player is the guy on a winning team and the best player is the guy who has the best season, regardless of how good his team is. That's what a lot of people say. And, when we have a case like this, where there's 2 very close players and one of them is on a good team and one of them isn't, to me, you don't need to make that distinction because the most valuable player is the best player, I think.
What statistics do voters look at for the MVP race?
I mean, I think a lot of them look at WAR, wins above replacement. I think that's a good place to start because that, takes everything into consideration. And for Ohtani, that adds his offense and his pitching. And for Aaron Judge, it adds his offense and his defense. So a lot of people start with that. Now, Aaron Judge has a higher WAR than Ohtani. So I think a lot of people can just look right at that and say, that's a good enough reason to favor Judge. Last year, Ohtani had the higher WAR over Vladimir Guerrero Jr. So you didn't need to have the whole narrative about him being a two-way player, and that makes him better because the numbers told you that he was better. This year you don't. So you have to decide if you believe that the WAR literally is accurate, then Judge is the guy. If you believe that it doesn't really measure Ohtani accurately because you don't think the way it measures pitchers is accurate, or it doesn't account for the value of him basically filling 2 roster spots for one person, then you might still give Ohtani the edge. But I would say that's kind of where people start. And OPS, offensively is a pretty good number to kind of take everything together. I always like to use win probability added, which basically what that means is the context of what you did. How important was it? If you hit a home run in a tie game in the 8th inning, that is a much bigger impact on your team winning the game than if you hit a home run in the 3rd inning when your team is down 5-0. So win probability added takes all that into account. If you add it up over the whole season, you find out which players' offensive performance came at more critical times to winning those games. And that's another thing that Judge has a big advantage over Ohtani in terms of that too. Ohtani certainly has a great case, but Judge has a great case too. So it's going to be really interesting.
What are some factors that you think would work in Ohtani's favor?
I mean, obviously the biggest thing for Ohtani is just that he's a two-way player and nobody else has done this. And there are going to be people who say, as great as Aaron Judge's season is, it's still just like other seasons we've seen, great offensive seasons. He's not doing anything particularly unique. Whereas nobody has done what Shohei Ohtani does. Nobody has been this successful as a pitcher or hitter since Babe Ruth. And you could argue that Ohtani's even done more than Babe Ruth. So then you can make the case that nobody ever has done what he's doing. So I think that is certainly, the people that are going to vote for Ohtani are going to vote for him because of that.
Ohtani's WAR, according to Baseball Reference, is 8.2, and Judge's Baseball Reference WAR is 8.7. So they're number 1 and number 2. And then Fangraphs also has Judge above Ohtani with 9.3 and Ohtani 8.2. So it's relatively close, but Judge is obviously ahead. But as you've mentioned in the past, WAR is not perfect, right?
No, I think WAR is really not a great stat for pitchers. I don't think it really accurately represents what a pitcher does. And also Ohtani gets a negative applied to his WAR because it's a DH. Because generally speaking, if you're comparing a DH to a position player who plays defense, the DH obviously has less value because he's not playing in the field. But in Ohtani's case, he's pitching, so he gets some credit back for that because he's pitching, but he still has also lost some. So, a lot of people would argue that math is not accurate, and it's just numbers in a computer. I don't think anybody's applying subjective values to it or judgments to it. So that's up to the voters to figure out.
Who do you think should win the AL MVP?
I don't know. I honestly could go either way. I feel like because I wrote a book about Ohtani that people are probably not going to take my opinion as neutral anyway. So I'm trying to pretty much stay out of it. But I think that you could definitely make a case for either guy, and I would not be surprised if either guy won.
So let me phrase it differently then. Who do you think is going to win it based on what you heard from other writers and what you've read in the media?
I mean, right now, I think it's close, but I think that I seem to see a little bit more in favor of Judge than Ohtani. There's definitely significant support for both of them. But I mean, just kind of judging by, the narrative in the public forum seems to lean a little more towards Judge. But, when I talk to people, when I talk to voters, I get a lot of them too that say they are going to vote for Ohtani. So I honestly have no idea. Also, we still have 3 weeks to go. So a lot can change in 3 weeks.
At this point, do you think the chances of Ohtani winning are like 40%, 30, 40?
I would say 40 to 50 probably is pretty close. Definitely, I would not be surprised either way at this point.
Well, it's going to be interesting next 3 weeks. Hey, viewers, let us know your thoughts on who should win the MVP in the comment section below. Also, our books on Ohtani are available online, so please check them out. I'll put the links to Amazon in the description below. See you guys next time.